finally sending this email, something I've agonized over for months, maybe even years if I'm honest with myself. You don't know me, but I watch your YouTube channel religiously, especially when you talk about cover-ups, conspiracies, and shady military operations. That's precisely why I chose you. I believe you're one of the few out there who can fully grasp the magnitude of what's going on at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, my old stomping grounds, the place I called my professional home for 7 years straight, the place where I once felt proud to wear the uniform, proud to maintain security, proud to serve my country. It seems almost laughable now that I thought it was nothing more than an ordinary posting. Like I said, I spent close to 7 years working in security at Wright-Pat, as we affectionately called it. And in that time, I heard every rumor in the book, from Roswell debris allegedly stored in Hangar 18 to bizarre alien artifacts, to all sorts of hush-hush deals with private defense contractors. I used to laugh at them, or at least dismiss them with a grin, because you know how rumors spread in the military. One small kernel of truth can blossom into a monstrous fairy tale once enough imagination and boredom come into play. But that was before I started noticing the real stuff. The shady after-midnight comings and goings. The random civilian scientists who appeared in secure areas unannounced. The off-limits medical labs that always seemed to have their own brand of security, separate from ours. Let me back up and try to tell this chronologically, because that might help me keep some coherence. Though I warn you, my thoughts might scatter at times. Frankly, just hitting send on this email is a nerve-wracking experience. The weight on my shoulders feels immense, but it's overshadowed by the moral compulsion to let the truth out, come what may. It started in late 2020, right when the rest of the world was dealing with the health crisis, lockdowns, and all that chaos. You'd think the base would be running at half speed, fewer people around, less hustle and bustle, and for a while, that's exactly how it seemed. Then, gradually, these odd late-night visits began, and not just occasional bureaucrats coming in for emergency planning. I'm talking about entire caravans of blacked-out SUVs and windowless vans rolling up around 1 or 2 in the morning, escorted by top brass. At first, I brushed it off. We do have classified projects. That's no secret. Wright-Pat has always been a hub for advanced aerospace research and specialized intelligence operations. But something felt different, like the energy around these events was heavier, more urgent. The usual courtesy or routine was absent. People walked with stiff postures, always glancing over their shoulders, looking like they were under intense pressure or stress. The area they headed toward, Building 219, never used to be busy, especially not in the middle of the night. It was labeled on base maps as storage, a vague categorization that nobody had reason to question until those suspicious arrivals began. Being part of the security force, I sometimes oversaw camera feeds. I'd see them vanish into that building with crates, sealed metallic cases, and sometimes, if I zoomed in carefully, I'd notice people being escorted inside, wearing blindfolds. Blindfolds Donovan. That was my first real jolt. Who blindfolds people inside a secure base? It was definitely not standard procedure, and the ones wearing blindfolds weren't always in uniform. Some looked like civilian contractors, and others I couldn't quite identify. They had that posture you see in detainees, head down, shoulders slumped, more resigned than you'd expect from typical staff. I tried to keep my curiosity discreet. One misstep in the military environment, especially involving classified matters, and you can find yourself in a world of hurt, or out of a job, or worse. So I asked around carefully, only confiding in a few coworkers I trusted with my life. I remember one guy in particular, Jake, not his real name obviously. He and I used to do PT together, watch football, talk about our families. He was never one to chase conspiracies or rumors, so I figured if anyone might have a more rational explanation, it'd be him. One evening I cornered him after shift, casually bringing up Building 219, and I immediately saw his face go pale. He basically hissed at me to keep my voice down. He said, and this is almost verbatim, "I don't want to talk about it. They're doing behavior modification or something. Some higher-ups mentioned the term, like MK Ultra type stuff. And just like that, he clammed up. He gave me this desperate look that said, "Don't push me further," so I didn't. But that seed was planted in my mind. MK Ultra, the CIA's old mind control program from decades ago. I'd read about it, like most people who browse declassified documents online or watch conspiracy videos. LSD experiments, unethical psychological torture, even talk of psychic driving. That was ancient history, or so I'd thought. From that point on, 2021 took a strange turn. I began logging every odd incident. People would enter building 219 in normal shape, alert, talkative, sometimes even sharing a friendly nod or a casual salute, and then emerge hours later looking half dead. Pale skin, blank stares, moving in this robotic, jerky manner as if they weren't fully in control of their own limbs. A few times, I saw individuals needing support to walk, carried out by guards or men in lab coats who seemed more annoyed than concerned, if that makes sense. No compassion, just a cold efficiency. We, the regular security staff, were instructed to mind our own business. Some senior officer would inevitably bark at us to maintain standard perimeter oversight and not involve ourselves in specialized operations. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were testing new survival gear, or maybe they were part of some intense psychological stress training. That does happen, SEER school and so forth. But deep down, it felt wrong. On December 3rd, 2021, my sister's birthday. This date is seared into my memory. I planned to drive to Cleveland that weekend to surprise her. But that night, around 3 a.m. while I was on duty, two civilians stumbled out of building 219, looking absolutely disoriented, swaying like they'd had 10 shots too many. Their clothing was slightly disheveled. One guy's shirt was untucked, and the other had red marks on his wrist that looked suspiciously like restraints had been there. As I stepped forward to help, or at least see if they needed medical attention, two uniformed men came out of the shadows. I still don't know how I didn't see them before that moment. They seemed to blend into the darkness. They placed themselves between me and the civilians, told me curtly, "Return to your post. This does not concern you." Their tone left no room for argument, so I backed off. But the image was burned into my mind. The sight of those men, stumbling like the life had been sucked out of them. Days later, I recognized one of those men. He was a major, someone who usually worked administrative tasks. I'd seen him in the canteen a few times, joking with others, always the life of the party. Now, when I spotted him in the hallway, he walked perfectly, face calm, showing zero trace of the confusion I'd witnessed. I tried to catch his eye, but he offered only a short nod, like I was a stranger, and moved on. No acknowledgement that we'd effectively locked eyes during that bizarre night. That was the moment I realized these people either didn't remember or were being forced to pretend they didn't remember. In mid-2022, it all got very real for me. I was called in for a standard security briefing, or so I was told. Usually, these briefings cover routine updates, changes in protocol, possible security threats, that kind of standard fare. But when I entered the briefing room, the atmosphere felt charged, like static electricity in the air. The lights were low. Two individuals in lab coats, civilians presumably, but they had the bearing of authority figures, started asking me questions, each more prying than the last. Initially, it was benign. Are you satisfied with your work? How's your morale? Then it gradually escalated. Would you ever disclose base activities to outsiders? How do you feel about direct orders that conflict with your personal ethics? Their voices shifted into this measured, almost hypnotic rhythm. My focus started slipping, and I swear I felt a pressure in my head, an actual physical sensation, like an invisible band tightening around my skull. My thoughts became foggy, jumbled. At one point I recall them asking, "Are you loyal to us?" over and over, in a chant-like manner. The room spun, or maybe I was spinning, and then darkness, or a blank period anyway. I don't remember leaving that room. My next coherent memory is me stumbling down a corridor, disoriented and nauseous, checking my watch to see that nearly 2 hours had vanished. I had missed a roll call, which never happened. My head pounded, my heart raced, and the worst part was an inexplicable block in my mind whenever I tried to frame the words to describe what just happened. They must have tried something on me, whether it was hypnosis or one of those behavior modification tactics I'd been hearing about, or drugs, or even electromagnetic pulses that scrambled my short-term memory. Whatever it was, it worked, because I felt unbelievably compromised. I returned to my supervisor to file a report, but I just couldn't. The words refused to form on my tongue, as if part of my brain had been locked. That was the turning point. I realized that if they were brazen enough to do that to me, a security staffer, they had likely gone far deeper with others. And that's when I began digging on my own. Late nights in front of secure terminals, accessing various restricted files, using borrowed credentials from unsuspecting colleagues who left ID cards lying around. Not my proudest moment, but I was driven by an urgent need for answers. I stumbled upon references to Project Fthon, a name I'd never heard in any official capacity. The files were heavily redacted, but I managed to piece together a few disturbing keywords: psychotropic-induced compliance, advanced behavioral conditioning, neurological reprogramming. The hair on my arm stood up reading phrases like that. It was MK Ultra on steroids, modernized with advanced technology, as if all those lessons gleaned from Cold War atrocities had been streamlined and polished into a new program. Apparently, it wasn't confined to Wright-Patterson. The same documents hinted at collaboration with Fort Detrick in Maryland, long rumored for its involvement in biological warfare research. Another mention pointed to Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, notorious for chemical and biological weapons testing, and a few cryptic references even suggested ties to Groom Lake, commonly referred to as Area 51. Every new piece of evidence amplified my anxiety. The deeper I ventured, the more I felt eyes on me. My phone began making odd clicking noises during calls, or calls would drop altogether when I broached anything sensitive. I'd see the same SUV parked across the street from my apartment at odd hours. One night, returning from the grocery store, I found my front door unlocked. No forced entry, nothing stolen, but subtle signs that someone had been there, like a moved coffee mug on the counter, or my desk drawer slightly ajar. Sleep became a luxury. I'd lie awake, mind-spinning scenarios in which I'd be taken in the middle of the night. Or maybe they'd blackmail me into silence by threatening my family. That's how these things go, right? I tried to keep calm, remind myself that maybe it was all paranoia. Then I'd remember the blank faces, the stumbling men, the forced hush, and realize it was all too real. Let me elaborate on these so-called experiments. The second-hand knowledge I gleaned from hush-hush conversations and half-opened files points to a multi-pronged approach to controlling human behavior. Psychotropic drugs. They've improved LSD derivatives or created entirely new compounds that can more precisely target the human will, inhibiting free thought without rendering the subject unconscious. They want them docile but functional. That's the difference from the old MK Ultra days, where LSD might leave people hallucinating or too disoriented. This new generation of substances apparently creates compliance, even a weird sense of devotion to commands. Sensory deprivation, overload. Some labs apparently are equipped with specialized tanks and rooms for advanced forms of sensory deprivation, combined with periods of sudden disorienting stimuli, loud noises, strobe lights, or bizarre audio frequencies. The repeated cycle cracks the psyche more effectively than old-fashioned torture. Neurological implants. This is the scariest to me. Rumors swirl that certain individuals, especially those with specialized skills or high-value knowledge, are fitted with micro-implants. These implants might stimulate parts of the brain to induce fear, compliance, or even euphoria, shaping behavior on command. Electromagnetic, RF manipulation. Some documents hinted at radio frequency-based methods that can modulate a person's mood or aggression levels. I can't confirm the technical details, but references to certain wave frequencies keep popping up. It matches conspiracy chatter about microwave weaponry or crowd control devices. The ultimate aim? A soldier or agent who follows orders without question, does not waver due to moral or ethical concerns, and possibly has partial memory suppression so that even if captured or questioned, they can't divulge secrets they no longer consciously recall. It's the holy grail of clandestine warfare, unstoppable human drones. As I uncovered more, I realized I was teetering on the edge of danger. People disappeared from my circle. Jake, the friend who first whispered about MK Ultra, requested a transfer and was gone within a week. Another coworker who'd asked a few too many questions about the odd after-midnight convoys abruptly retired, citing personal reasons. When I tried emailing him, the messages bounced. The phone number I had for him went straight to an automated, no longer in service recording. I even ventured to ask my direct superior about these black vans, feigning ignorance. He gave me a stony glare and said something along the lines of, "We follow orders. We do not meddle in top-tier operations. Understood?" The unspoken threat in that statement was deafening. I used to think UFO stories were nonsense. Then, I started hearing from folks who claimed that deep below the base, beyond the standard sublevels, there are entire floors restricted to a handful of individuals with cross-branch clearance. Supposedly, they store or study exotic materials. Some say from alleged crashes. Others swear it's advanced human tech disguised as alien to hide it from the public. I can't confirm, but I noticed that the men in lab coats sometimes wore ID badges bearing insignias I'd never seen before. Not quite Air Force, not quite contractor, something else. The base rumor mill suggested these might be joint agency scientists working on everything from anti-gravity propulsion to reverse engineering potentially non-human craft. The question that haunted me was, is Project Fthon connected to that? There's also talk of cryptid sightings around the area. Strange, hair-covered bipeds, Bigfoot-like, spotted near the Huffman Prairie. Reptilian entities rumored to lurk in underground tunnels. Even stories of a crawler humanoid, witnessed near the perimeter fence. Some of it might be urban legend, fueled by the overall mystique of the base. But in a place that allegedly experiments with advanced technology, who's to say what is or isn't possible? More importantly, how does it tie in with mind control? A paranoid part of me wonders if the same labs working on psychological manipulation might also be dabbling in genetic experiments or exobiology. The leap from one unethical practice to another is often smaller than we imagine. Anyway, I digress. The point is that Wright-Pat is a breeding ground for secrets, some more outlandish than others. But for me, the biggest concern is how they're systematically refining the craft of overriding human agency. It's an affront to everything moral and constitutional. The more I uncovered, the sicker I felt. I started losing weight. My hair began falling out in clumps, probably from stress. I remember waking up one night in a cold sweat, convinced someone was standing over my bed. The darkness was silent, but the feeling of being watched persisted. I could barely go back to sleep. I toyed with the idea of running, just packing my car and disappearing into some remote stretch of the country. But that's not exactly feasible. My entire life is here, and the idea of living off the grid with no plan or resources was just too daunting. So I decided the only recourse was exposure. I had to tell someone. But who? Traditional media wouldn't touch this without evidence, and obtaining hard evidence was nearly impossible. My stolen glimpses at documents, while damning, were not enough to force a top-level inquiry. Whistleblower protections in this arena are basically non-existent if it's labeled national security. And that's where you come in, Donovan. I trust you, not personally, but as a figure who has consistently brought hidden stories to light on your YouTube channel. You're unafraid to tackle the uncomfortable subjects, the UFO sightings, cryptid encounters, shadow government programs. I've watched your interviews with other whistleblowers, some of whom were discredited by the mainstream press, yet many of their claims aligned exactly with what I was seeing. You gave them a platform and listened attentively. So I began drafting this email in my head for months, building up the courage to write it all down. I had to wait until I was on leave, traveling out of state, to even type this on a computer I'd bought with cash under an assumed name. I'm using a secure connection that, hopefully, the powers that be can't trace. If they do, I might be done for. But the truth needs to come out. Let me also address the moral aspect. Some might argue that this is essential for national security, that we need loyal soldiers who won't break under interrogation or question orders. But where does it end? The line between defending a nation and controlling its populace from the inside is razor thin. Think about the potential for abuse. If they can reprogram a soldier, they can do it to civilians, journalists, political dissenters, anyone they deem a threat. That's not freedom, it's tyranny. And as horrifying as this is, I suspect it's only one piece of a grander puzzle. The same men behind these experiments likely have ties to other black projects, maybe controlling narratives about unknown aerial phenomena, hush money payments for families of test subjects, covert alliances with private labs that operate outside the public's radar. It's a shadow ecosystem that thrives on ignorance and fear. I recall one conversation, conducted in whispers, far from any official building, with a mid-level technician who swore that some of the advanced gear used in these behavior modification sessions was not entirely of human origin. He was half joking, but the idea lodged in my mind. He spoke about machines that interface with the electromagnetic fields in the brain, referencing a rumored artifact that had been at Wright-Patterson since the 1940s or 50s, possibly part of that rumored Roswell debris. Could it be some form of alien tech that taught us how to manipulate the human mind with frequencies? This is deep conspiracy territory, but after everything I've witnessed, I'm not dismissing anything outright. In the course of my final weeks on base, I remember one particularly jarring scene. It was around 2 a.m., and I was assigned to a low-profile guard shift near an administrative cluster. I'd been pacing around to stay awake, sipping bad coffee, when I spotted a small group walking briskly down a corridor. Leading them was a high-ranking officer, whose name is well known on base, someone typically in charge of mundane logistics. But behind him marched 5 or 6 individuals in lab coats, pushing a gurney with a strapped-down occupant. The occupant had a black hood over their head and struggled weakly. I froze. Instinct told me to challenge them, but training told me to wait for them to identify themselves. They never paused. One of the lab coat people glared at me with a single chilling glance, and they continued down the corridor to a restricted elevator that descended far below the standard basement levels. I didn't breathe a word of that incident to anyone on base. Who would I tell? It felt insane, like I was living in some sci-fi horror flick. But the next day, I overheard a cryptic conversation in the cafeteria about a Phase 4 test subject. Then everything clicked. They were openly, and yet discreetly, escalating these human trials. If Phase 4 is more intense than whatever I'd already witnessed, I can't even imagine what those tests entail. After scouring more data, it became clear that these programs are an open secret at the highest echelons of base leadership. Lower-level staff are kept in the dark or intimidated into silence. Contractors come and go under non-disclosure agreements with draconian penalties. And for the unlucky few who see too much, like me, the base uses intimidation, psychological manipulation, or forced transfers to stifle curiosity. My biggest fear is that even sending this email might be playing into their hands. Maybe they expect a leak, and they'll use it as an excuse to clamp down further. But I can't remain silent. The world needs to see how easily clandestine military programs can undermine the very liberty they're sworn to protect. If I vanish, or if I end up babbling nonsense in some psych ward, you'll know why. It won't be an accident. So please, Donovan, take this information and do what you do best. Shine a light on the shadows. I can't supply you with official documents or physical evidence without risking immediate detection, but my testimony aligns with dozens of other anomalies and stories circulating in hushed corners of the web. Cross-reference it with other whistleblowers from Wright-Pat. or with any leaked references to Project Fthon. I'm certain I'm not the only one who's tried to blow the whistle, just maybe the one reckless enough to put it all in one place. I don't know where life will take me after sending this. Maybe I'll try to keep a low profile. Maybe I'll attempt to gather more intel from a distance. But if you decide to break this story, just remember my plight, my fear, and the countless others who are trapped in the clutches of these experiments. They deserve freedom, not mind shackles enforced by chemical and technological tyranny. During my last few weeks, I ran across a fleeting mention of collaboration with an external group codenamed Hawthorne Initiative. I never found more than a single reference, but it was in the same batch of documents that listed Fort Detrick, Dugway, and Groom Lake. There was a note about joint specialized assets and integrated research protocols. I suspect this group might be an overarching umbrella for multiple black projects, from mind control to exotic propulsion. Keep an eye out for that name. Anyway, I've rattled on for a long while, but if I'm aiming to get the entire picture across, brevity won't do. I need people to see the entire puzzle, the context, the creeping sense of dread that's haunted me for over a year now. That's why I'm not editing this or trying to make it neat. It's raw, because I'm raw. So Donovan, take all this seriously or not. Believe me or don't. But please, for the sake of those trapped in these programs, whether they be soldiers, civilians, or otherwise, keep an open mind. Investigate. Ask your sources. Dig deeper. Because if this is happening at Wright-Patterson, I shudder to think what's happening in other corners of the country, or even the world, where secrecy reigns unchallenged. I want to dive deep into one of the strangest ongoing stories I've come across in recent memory. We're going to explore a string of bizarre events involving alleged alien orbs, drones, cryptic messages, and even celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay. Now you might be wondering, what does Gordon Ramsay have to do with aliens, UFOs, or any of this at all? Believe me, that was my first question too. But when you piece together all these sightings and hints, it starts to paint a truly eerie picture. There's talk of orbs in the sky, possible military exercises in previously quiet areas, strange flights that land in the middle of nowhere, and even an alleged home invasion, by an alien no less. So, buckle up, because in this video, I'm going to weave together these threads, speculate on what could be going on, and offer some theories that might explain all this madness. Whether you think this is just a bunch of internet hype or a genuine sign that we're on the verge of disclosure, let's get into it and see if we can make sense of everything that's happened. Let's start at the beginning, where this whole story first started picking up steam on social media. The first hints came in the form of drone sightings, or at least, that's how people initially labeled them. Folks were filming objects in the sky, many of which were large, silent, and seemingly without the typical red and green FAA lights you'd expect. Others claimed these orbs were literally morphing in the air, glowing so brightly that no standard aircraft explanation seemed to fit. One particular video that caught everyone's attention showed a person running outside barefoot, clearly in a panic, yelling something like, "What the heck is that?" The object in the sky was bigger than a nearby house, and moving in a way that didn't look like any commercial plane. Understandably, the person behind the camera was freaking out. If you've seen those videos, you know how off-putting they are. It's not just the visuals. The voices of the witnesses sound genuinely startled. Then, around the same time, there was another cluster of videos popping up of what some are calling alien pods. If you haven't heard about that, it's basically supposed footage of these small pod-like structures, some no bigger than a few feet across, that look mechanical or organic, depending on who you ask. No one seems to know if these pods are just elaborate props for a hoax or something else entirely. The interesting thing is that people notice strange inscriptions or symbols on them, reminiscent of the sort of hieroglyphic patterns that have long been rumored to show up in crashed UFO materials, like the famous stories connected to the Roswell incident. But we'll get into the Roswell theories a bit later. For now, just keep in mind that multiple sightings of strange orbs and weird pods happened in quick succession. On top of that, you might recall a wave of posts about alien battles in the sky. This started when someone posted a video that appeared to show multiple lights darting around in fast, erratic movements, almost like they were chasing or fighting each other above the city. A lot of folks claim this clip came from Las Vegas, although the footage is apparently older, maybe a few years back. But it resurfaced in the context of all these new sightings, fueling speculation that maybe these aren't just random orbs flitting around. Could they be engaged in some kind of aerial warfare? Or is it a reflection on a window, a clever editing trick, or a trick of perspective? While that particular video might not be recent or entirely legitimate, it didn't stop the conversation. In fact, it encouraged more people to post their own sightings of aerial phenomena, from bright orbs moving at breakneck speeds to formations that look like they're performing intelligent maneuvers. Next, we have this super weird piece of the puzzle. People have been reporting hearing cryptic announcements or sirens near military bases, often with words like exercise, exercise, exercise. One person described living near a base for 70 years and never having heard an alarm like that before. She was in the Army herself for 6 years and claimed it was not normal procedure, or at least not something typically done publicly. Others chimed in, saying they've been around bases their whole life and have rarely heard something so loud and alarming, as if the base was prepping for a real-world emergency. This fueled the rumor that the military was engaged in some kind of training operation, specifically related to these unidentified flying objects. Of course, drills happen all the time, but in the context of the swirling rumors about aliens, drones, orbs, and everything else, it felt suspicious. Then came the story that really ramped up the fear factor, an alleged attempt by an alien being to break into someone's house. Yes, you heard that right, an alien home invasion. A woman named Ashley posted a video in which she said that she received footage from someone named Lee, or Nam Lee in some versions of the story, who claimed to have caught an alien on camera trying to get in through the back door of their home at around 4:15 in the morning. The footage, which Ashley shared, shows the homeowner peeking around a corner toward the back door, apparently hearing loud bangs, and even the door handle turning. What's even weirder is that the homeowner said they didn't actually hear the strange noises at the time. They only discovered them upon playback of the security camera footage. That means if there were bizarre squeals, chirps, or alien language, it wasn't audible to the human ear in real time, but somehow the camera picked it up. When the homeowner went outside to investigate later, expecting to find footprints or damage to the fence, there was nothing. No sign of forced entry, no footprints in the dirt, just a locked fence and an ominous sense that something had definitely tried to get in. Naturally, many folks in the comments jumped on the idea that this must be a hoax or simply a weird trespasser. But then again, the timing was peculiar because all these other sightings, drone or orb footage, and cryptic announcements from military bases had been ramping up. If you ask me, the timing alone raises eyebrows. Even the notion that the homeowner felt someone or something was on their roof is reminiscent of stories about watchers or unknown entities that climb onto houses. Could it be a wild animal? Possibly. Could it be something more sinister and extraterrestrial? Well, that's the question we keep running into. Now, as if all that wasn't strange enough, the narrative takes a hard left turn into celebrity territory with Gordon Ramsay. Yes, the famous chef known for yelling at folks in kitchens worldwide. Suddenly, he posts a picture to his social media that looks completely innocent at first. He's on a plane, talking about going somewhere, with a caption mentioning something cryptic like, "Big and small things on the way." No one paid it too much mind initially, until people started analyzing the background. Some very dedicated internet detectives noticed that the mountain range outside his plane window didn't match typical airports around major cities. Instead, it seemed to match the terrain near a certain restricted area in Nevada. That's right, Area 51. Not long after, we start hearing from a flight attendant who said she was on a near-empty flight with Gordon Ramsay that landed in the middle of the desert, escorted by men in black suits, with no standard passenger protocols. She also mentioned that Gordon Ramsay left behind a tiny pan, something so small it didn't look like any normal human would cook with it. And then Gordon Ramsay posts another video telling someone they're getting close and that the proof is in the pan. People took those statements, combined them with the hush-hush flight, and started speculating that Gordon Ramsay was doing some covert mission, possibly linked to top-secret alien technology. Admittedly, it sounds like something straight out of a comedic sci-fi flick. But this is the internet, and conspiracies can run rampant, especially when you have all these UFO sightings in the background. Then folks made the connection to Gordon Ramsay's cookware brand, Hexclad, and pointed out how the pattern on this cookware is hexagonal, reminiscent of so-called alien metals or advanced materials rumored to have come from crashed UFOs. One content creator even showed a leaked document with hexagonal patterns that purportedly match the design of the pan, suggesting we might be using extraterrestrial metal in everyday cookware. Now, to be fair, that leaked document may very well be part of an elaborate marketing scheme. We can't ignore the fact that a few of the videos discussing these theories had tags like #HexcladPartner. It's entirely possible that the entire Gordon Ramsay storyline is part of an ingenious ad campaign where they stir the pot, pardon the pun, by linking their product to conspiracies. But it doesn't stop people from wondering, could there be a grain of truth behind it? Let's step back and think about the possibility of actual alien-derived technology in our everyday lives. The idea of reverse-engineered alien tech has been circulating for decades, fueled by stories about the Roswell crash in 1947, rumors about the Majestic 12 group tasked with studying alien wreckage, and the leaps in technology we've seen since the mid-20th century. Some UFO enthusiasts believe inventions like the integrated circuit, fiber optics, or even touchscreen technology have roots in crashed alien craft. The timeline goes: Roswell crash in 1947, secrecy for a few years, then a sudden boom in electronics during the 1950s and 1960s. Could it be coincidence? Absolutely. Could it be the result of reverse engineering? That's where the believers and skeptics draw their lines in the sand. According to one theory, Gordon Ramsay's mention of "the proof is in the pan" could be a playful nod to the idea that we've all been using advanced materials without knowing it. If that's the case, maybe his presence at Area 51 was part of a demonstration or a cooking show for secret personnel. That idea sounds outlandish, but given how surreal all these sightings and stories have been, some folks have started asking, why not? Area 51 is famously rumored to be the place where the U.S. government keeps and tests alien craft, among other top-secret aviation projects. If there's a real attempt at soft disclosure, maybe the powers that be think it's less threatening to reveal it via comedic or absurd leaks involving a celebrity chef. Then again, maybe that's exactly how you'd run a marketing stunt, by hooking into existing UFO mania. The question remains, why has talk of these orbs and drones gone quiet in official circles? When the first spate of sightings happened not too long ago, mainstream news was covering it almost daily. Then, all of a sudden, it felt like everything went silent. People on social media started noticing that posts and discussions about these orbs were getting suppressed or overshadowed. Some claim they couldn't even find older reports that were easily available just weeks before. It's as if someone or something wants the conversation to fade away. Is this just the natural cycle of internet virality? Or is there a more deliberate clampdown in place? The phenomenon of code words emerges, with people who want to keep discussing UFOs resorting to cryptic references or abbreviations to avoid algorithms or potential censorship. Conspiracy-minded folks suggest it's an intentional hush job, possibly because these sightings are either more real or more complicated than we realize. One angle that intrigues me is that these sightings could be a sign that something big is coming, a big event, as some in the UFO community like to say. The logic goes, maybe these UFOs or orbs are either scouts or advanced craft monitoring Earth because we're about to hit a turning point. Could it be environmental disaster, global conflict, or some cosmic event we're not yet aware of? Another possibility is the so-called Project Bluebeam or fake alien invasion theory. According to that line of thought, shadowy government forces might stage an alien threat, using advanced drone technology, holograms, or secret aircraft, to unify the world under a single authoritarian power. People point to the weird sightings of identical drones, the shift in focus away from them in mainstream media, and the subtle infiltration of these stories into popular culture, suggesting it might all be part of a carefully orchestrated narrative. Of course, we have to weigh the mundane explanations. The alien orbs might be advanced military drones, whether from the US or another country, that are being tested in various conditions. The alien pods could be prototypes of new tech, or simply hoaxes. The weird lights in the sky captured by amateur astronomers near Saturn might be satellites or natural space phenomena. The alien battle footage from Las Vegas might just be clever editing or reflections on glass. Even the alleged alien home invasion might be an intruder who is too stealthy to leave footprints, or a complete fabrication for social media clout. Still, does that explain all the sightings, the cryptic announcements near bases, and the suspicious coincidences with Gordon Ramsay's trip to the middle of the desert with men in black? Let's talk about the tiny pan phenomenon for a moment. Is it possible that the reason it's so small is because it's meant for demonstration, like a sample of a new metal or new technology that can be tested quickly without giving away the larger application? Think about how labs often keep small prototypes. If, hypothetically, the government contracted Gordon Ramsay or his brand to test the durability of materials that can withstand extreme heat or distribute it flawlessly, maybe he was summoned to somewhere in Nevada to show how this cookware works under stressful, perhaps even extraterrestrial conditions. Far-fetched? Sure. But we're in a realm of speculation where we either accept that this is a brilliant viral marketing scheme or entertain the possibility of clandestine deals involving alien metallurgy. We also have the element of why Gordon Ramsay. He's not exactly known for his involvement in conspiracy theories. He's known for calling people idiot sandwiches and making fine dining. One might argue that having a celebrity chef at the forefront of a bizarre alien narrative throws everyone off. But maybe that's precisely the point, if this is a big, orchestrated marketing push, or, ironically, if it's a cunning method of soft disclosure. People might be more receptive and less alarmed if they see a well-known, somewhat humorous figure talk about an alien pan than if the government just holds a press conference. When something is delivered in a half-joking manner, it gives the public room to ease into the idea or dismiss it, depending on their comfort level. That sort of plausible deniability is often how big revelations can be teased, without sparking widespread panic. Now, regarding the technology angle, reverse engineering from alleged crashed UFOs has been a mainstay in UFO lore since the 1980s, if not earlier. Bob Lazar famously claimed to have worked at a site near Area 51, analyzing alien propulsion systems. He described anti-gravity engines and element 115 powering the craft. While many continue to dispute Lazar's claims, a lot of what he said dovetails neatly with the possibility that the government has been trying to harness extraterrestrial tech for decades. If that's true, it makes sense that we might see smaller consumer applications of advanced materials, like super strong cookware or unbelievably smooth surfaces that self-clean or reflect heat in strange ways. The big leaps we've taken in stealth technology, fiber optics, or integrated circuits could be a hint that these breakthroughs aren't entirely from human genius alone, but from the ingenious repurposing of alien craft. All of this begs the question, if these sightings of orbs, drones, and pods are connected to the technology we're using now, are we at risk of a broader alien response? Picture this scenario. If an advanced civilization lost some of its craft to Earth decades ago and only recently discovered that we've been tinkering with it to create our own tech, maybe they're not too happy. What if all these sightings and rumored break-ins are attempts by alien scouts to retrieve, sabotage, or monitor how far we've come with their technology? I know it sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, But some abductees and contactees have long claimed that certain alien groups watch us closely to see how we handle advanced knowledge. If we're weaponizing it or using it for shady agendas, they might step in to curtail our progress or protect Earth from ourselves. Alternatively, it might all be hype. Maybe the drones are just the next generation of surveillance. Maybe the alien orb videos are nighttime sightings of new stealth craft. Maybe the alleged home invasion is a random break-in. But there's no denying how these separate threads have woven together online to create a tapestry of speculation. The biggest puzzle piece is still the question, why is no one talking about it anymore? We had a burst of mainstream coverage for UFOs, including official statements, the release of Pentagon UFO files, and even high-profile hearings. Then it fizzled. Perhaps official agencies realized it was stirring the pot too much. Or maybe they found a conventional explanation for the sightings that wasn't sensational enough for the media to keep reporting on it. The UFO community, however, rarely drops a topic just because the mainstream press moves on. So if people are resorting to code words, it might be due to suspicion that certain social media platforms are throttling posts about UFOs to quell hysteria. One plausible scenario is that the hype died because the videos themselves aren't as conclusive as people hope. The phenomenon of video or it didn't happen is strong. But ironically, even with all these cell phone videos, we're rarely left with clear, indisputable evidence. We see bright lights, shaky footage, or ambiguous shapes in the sky. Without official corroboration, it's all open to interpretation. The chunk of the story involving Gordon Ramsay might just be a coincidental side narrative that captured everyone's imagination. Still, the timeline in which he posts cryptic messages is spotted in a desert-like region, leaves a tiny pan behind, and references, "The proof is in the pan," definitely stokes the flames of speculation. Another angle is that we could be witnessing an actual ramp-up of genuine alien visitation. Sounds out there, I know, but some ufologists have predicted that if aliens ever planned a mass contact or significant presence, they would appear more frequently and in more conspicuous ways leading up to it. This wave of sightings, combined with weird, unexplainable attempts at what might be close encounters of the third kind at people's homes, could be part of that pattern. If so, we might be on the cusp of bigger revelations. The hush from the media might be either them wanting to avoid sensationalism until something verifiable happens, or it could be that certain powers are indeed clamping down on the conversation for fear of public panic. Remember, the reaction to global news can be unpredictable, and the last few years have shown how quickly misinformation can spread. Still, let's not ignore the simplest explanation for each phenomenon. The frantic barefoot man filming a large aircraft could just be capturing a big airplane flying low, possibly an unusual cargo plane with minimal lights. The woman near the military base might have overheard a standard training exercise announcement. The alien battle video might be years-old footage of something mundane or staged. The alleged alien break-in could be a person playing a prank, or an attempt to go viral. And, yes, the Gordon Ramsay involvement might be a marketing push by a cookware brand, playing with the online appetite for UFO stories. In a world where viral campaigns have used everything from cryptic websites to fake missing person narratives to garner attention, it's not inconceivable that #hexclad partner is another attempt to stand out in a crowded market. Let me leave you with some final questions to ponder. If we are using alien technology in everyday items, how would we even know? Unless the government or a whistleblower came forward with hard proof, we just see small leaps in consumer goods without connecting the dots. If aliens are truly trying to break into homes, or in some cases, make their presence known, what does that say about their objectives? Are they malevolent beings testing our defenses, or are they curious researchers checking how their technology is being used? And why would a celebrity chef be caught in the middle of it? Could it simply be that Gordon Ramsay is an international figure with enough resources and connections to access secret locations and dabble in exotic technology? Or is it all a game, a puzzle designed to make us question what we're really seeing? In closing, We have orbs, drones, and possible advanced crafts still being sighted all around the world. There have been unusual military exercises that people claim they've never heard before, even near bases where training is standard. We have a suspicious home security video featuring alleged alien noises and attempts at forced entry. And, bizarrely, Gordon Ramsay possibly flying into a restricted area in Nevada and teasing a miniature pan that might, or might not, have some alien connection. Are all these things separate random events that internet sleuths have strung together into one massive conspiracy? Or are we witnessing a major operation taking place right under our noses? A big reason to believe there's something real here is how quickly the conversation appears to be hushed or sidelined. Maybe that's just the fickle nature of viral trends, or maybe there's more to it. Regardless of whether you consider yourself a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, there's no denying that these stories capture our imagination. They make us reflect on how little we truly understand about our own skies, our government's technological capabilities, and the possibility of not being alone in the universe. For every hoax, there's 1,000 unexplained sightings or testimonies, and for every conspiracy theory, there might be a kernel of truth. The Gordon Ramsay saga, while it might seem silly, could reflect how any cultural icon might get swept into UFO lore if the circumstances line up. After all, pop culture and conspiracy theories have had a long and storied relationship, each fueling the other in countless ways. So here's what I propose we do. Keep an open mind but maintain healthy skepticism. If new footage surfaces of these orbs, pods, or alleged battles in the sky, try to verify it and look for mundane explanations. But don't dismiss it outright. If there's a sudden surge of weirdness, like more attempted break-ins that can't be explained, that might be worth taking note of. And if we see more cryptic posts from celebrities linking themselves to hidden bases or advanced technologies, well, that's another piece of the puzzle. Ultimately, the quest for truth is often a winding road, mixing real phenomena with illusions, marketing stunts, and genuine mysteries. It's up to each of us to sift through that noise. What do I personally believe? I think it's entirely possible that a portion of these sightings are legitimate unknowns, objects that don't conform to standard aircraft. As for the break-in story, I'm on the fence. It could be an overblown situation or a real close encounter of a disturbing kind. With Gordon Ramsay, I lean toward it being a very clever marketing ploy for cookware. But I also can't deny that the timing is very peculiar. Until we get official statements or more concrete evidence, we're left with speculation and theories. Yet, I can't shake the feeling that something bigger is brewing. The wide range of sightings, the sudden hush, and the infiltration of the storyline into mainstream platforms all point to the idea that we're either on the brink of a major reveal or we're being toyed with by some imaginative trickster. For now, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Do you buy any of the theories about advanced alien metal in everyday items? Or do you think it's all hype? Could the orbs, drones, and pods be part of a secret project that has nothing to do with extraterrestrials? Or are we looking at the first steps of a genuine, albeit bizarre, alien interaction with humankind? Share your stories if you've seen anything strange in the skies recently, or if you suspect your own cookware might be a little too advanced. And if you're worried about hush-hush operations, keep your ears open for unusual military announcements or overshadowed news stories. People often say the truth is out there, but sometimes it might be closer than we think, right in our kitchens, or right above our own rooftops, if you believe what some of these videos show. I want to be absolutely clear right from the start. I'm taking a big personal risk by sending you this message. I'm not comfortable revealing my name, or even the exact world organization I work for, but I can tell you that I serve as an atmospheric scientist for one of the leading intergovernmental bodies devoted to climate and weather research. It's an organization many people have heard of, and we collaborate closely with agencies like NOAA, NASA, and the European Space Agency, among others. Because of that, I have access to data that most people never see. Anyway, I need to describe what's been happening in as much detail as I can. I ask your understanding if this email gets long-winded, It's all connected in my mind, and I think if I don't get it all out, I might miss crucial details that could help people understand the bigger picture. And believe me, this is a big picture scenario. It spans everything from satellite imagery of cloud formation to suspicious government interventions that, in my personal opinion, are hiding something that goes beyond mere environmental concerns. I just don't know if it's alien, interdimensional, or something that defies easy categorization, but it's definitely not normal. First, let me set the stage by explaining how I came to notice these anomalies. Over the last decade, one of the tasks in my position has been to analyze cloud patterns over the Pacific Ocean, particularly in the area from roughly Hawaii to the coasts of California, Oregon, and Washington. This region is critical to understanding storm systems that eventually track inland, providing rainfall, or sometimes too much rainfall, to large swaths of the western United States. We use data from satellites such as NOAA's GOES-17, NASA's Terra and Aqua satellites, and the European Sentinel missions, among others. The idea is to keep a close watch on sea surface temperatures, cloud formation, and atmospheric circulation to improve climate models. Around late 2018, I started seeing some patterns in satellite images that struck me as very odd. At first, they just looked like abrupt lines or sharply defined edges in certain types of cloud banks, especially stratocumulus decks that form over the ocean. These lines were so crisp that they looked almost like someone had sliced the clouds with a razor blade from above. In meteorology, we do see certain cloud formations with sharp boundaries caused by frontal zones, or localized phenomena like outflow boundaries from thunderstorms. But these specific shapes didn't match the usual patterns. They appeared at times and in areas without any storms or front boundaries to cause them. I tried to cross-reference these anomalies with typical meteorological data: wind speed, relative humidity, sea surface temperature gradients, you name it. Nothing explained the neat geometry. Then I started noticing that some of these clouds had these circular, punched-out shapes, something akin to hole punch clouds, which can happen when aircraft pass through supercooled cloud layers, causing ice crystals to form and the droplets to evaporate in that region. But these were bigger and had symmetrical ring-like patterns that didn't match standard hole punch phenomena. Plus, they'd appear in clusters, almost as if they were arranged intentionally in a grid. It was like looking at polka dots across the sky, but on a scale of hundreds of miles. That definitely isn't something that forms naturally very often. At that time, I chalked it up to anomalies in the data, or some unusual but explainable meteorological event. Occasionally, I'd mention it casually to colleagues in the hallways or during coffee breaks, but nobody gave it much concern. Just weird weather, they'd say, or probably some sensor glitch. And for a while, I accepted that. But by mid-2019, these shapes seemed to become more frequent, more varied. Some days, I'd look at the near real-time satellite loops and see swirling patterns reminiscent of fractal art. Other days, there would be sharp, angular shapes cutting across what should have been uniform cloud decks. It felt too orchestrated, too patterned to be chaos. That's when I started a personal log. I figured if I documented everything meticulously, date, time, satellite used, approximate coordinates, size, shape, atmospheric conditions, I might find a cause. Little did I know that this log would lead me down a rabbit hole I'm still not sure I want to be in. But if I'm being honest, it became something of an obsession. I spent countless hours, often late at night, combing through raw satellite data from NOAA class, Comprehensive Large Array Data Stewardship System, and from NASA's Earth data. I developed some software scripts to highlight anomalies, searching for anything that deviated from typical cloud formation patterns or temperatures. One day, I got a ping from a colleague. I won't mention their name or department for their safety. They noticed I was pulling large amounts of archived data and wanted to ask me if I was involved in some special project. I gave them a half-truth, saying I was doing an internal study on mid-latitude cyclones. They seemed to accept that, but they also hinted that they'd come across data that looked strange in the same region. We had a quick chat in the cafeteria, again casual but purposeful, and they confided that they'd seen some readings from a project that measures aerosol concentrations above the ocean. The readings were off the charts in small localized patches, at altitudes where you wouldn't expect such anomalies. They were particularly struck by a spike in barium and aluminum particles, which can sometimes be associated with cloud seeding experiments. Silver iodide is more common though. But these spikes were bigger than anything they'd witnessed in typical cloud seeding or aerosol injection data. Why would anyone be injecting such high concentrations in the middle of nowhere? And these spots matched eerily well with the times and places I'd flagged in my personal log. Mind you, I'm not usually one for conspiracy theories. My job is grounded in science, peer-reviewed articles, reproducible data, all that. But this was enough to prompt me to dig deeper. I correlated the aerosol data with recorded flights from various agencies. I found no normal flight paths that corresponded to those areas, at least not from commercial planes. Military flights often don't have publicly available flight paths, so that was a dead end for me. Around the end of 2019, I started picking up rumors of certain hush-hush programs. You've probably heard the usual conspiratorial murmur about chemtrails or geoengineering, but I encountered documents that hinted at something more targeted. I can't confirm the authenticity of those documents, but they pointed to experiments aimed at not just modifying the weather, but also interacting with the ionosphere or magnetosphere. And that reminded me of the HAARP facility in Alaska, which everyone loves to connect to wild weather control conspiracies. While I've never taken those stories at face value, I couldn't help notice that some patterns in the data lines coincided with high levels of electromagnetic activity in the upper atmosphere. Some of that was gleaned from ground-based magnetometers and from satellites that measure charged particles. It's not proof of anything, of course, but it added another layer of weirdness. As if that wasn't enough, I started noticing something else in the satellite images. Occasionally, along with these bizarre cloud shapes, I'd see small points or elongated shapes that didn't correspond to typical aircraft signatures. They were usually reflective, bright pixels on the visible wavelength, and sometimes seemed to cast a slight shadow on the clouds below, indicating they were physically present in the atmosphere rather than some sensor artifact. These objects would appear in 1 or 2 frames and then vanish. Now, satellites take snapshots in intervals, so something that moves fast can easily appear in 1 frame and not in the next. But the consistency with which these anomalies showed up right near the weird cloud formations was striking. It crossed my mind to ask if they were some advanced drone or experimental aircraft, but the shapes didn't always look like typical planes or drones. Sometimes they were cylindrical, other times triangular. 1 or 2 times, I could swear the object had a distinctly oval or disc-like form. I'm aware that UFO enthusiasts always talk about disc-shaped craft, so I tried not to jump to conclusions. But the data was the data. This was no random lens flare or compression artifact, not in these carefully calibrated satellite instruments. In late January 2020, I finally confided in a higher-up who I thought might help me make sense of all this. We met in a small conference room, and I showed them a curated selection of the anomalies I'd been collecting. The reaction was off. Instead of curiosity or surprise, I was met with a sort of measured disapproval. They basically said, in an indirect way, that this was beyond my pay grade. They hinted that certain research areas are compartmentalized for national security reasons, and that I'd be wise to focus on my official tasks. That was a real wake-up call, because it told me that I was stepping on some serious toes. After that conversation, I laid low for a while, but I kept my personal log going. 2020 rolled on, and with the global pandemic happening, a lot of my organization's focus shifted elsewhere. We were all working remotely, which actually gave me more freedom to dig around in the data from home. I found the patterns continued: strange clouds, weird geometric outlines, sporadic aerosol spikes, even the occasional odd object in the imagery. But now, I started to notice them in more places: the southern Pacific near Easter Island, certain parts of the Indian Ocean, and occasionally the North Atlantic near the Azores. It was as if someone, or something, was seeding or sculpting clouds on a planetary scale. On a hunch, I checked older archives, going back to the early 2000s. These phenomena popped up here and there, but never as frequently. It really seemed to ramp up around 2017 or 2018. That's one reason I suspect a new technology might be in play, or some ramped-up program. I read about historical projects like Project Popeye in the 1960s and 70s, where the US military tried to induce rain in Vietnam for strategic purposes, and even earlier cloud seeding experiments in the 1950s. But none of those explain the bizarre shapes I was seeing, nor the possibility of advanced craft presence. Somewhere along the line, in mid-2021, I stumbled into a conversation with a researcher from a European agency. Again, I have to protect their identity. They were analyzing anomalies in the Arctic region, specifically focusing on an uptick in noctilucent clouds that seemed to carry unusual chemical signatures. They were mostly worried about the environmental implications, such as methane spikes in the upper atmosphere, but they also confided that they'd witnessed unidentified aerial phenomena on satellite footage, especially near the edges of these luminous night clouds. They had no explanation for what those objects were, but had heard rumors that a hush-hush European military group was investigating it. I found that eerily familiar, given everything I'd been seeing. What truly rattled me was the suggestion that certain officials in multiple governments were aware of these phenomena, but keeping it compartmentalized under the broad umbrella of national security. When you combine that with the patterns I've personally observed, it starts to sound more like a coordinated effort, possibly a global one, though not necessarily in the sense that every government is cooperating with each other. It could be a shadowy subgroup or multiple agencies, each running their own clandestine operations. During the late summer of 2021, I visited an actual field site in the southwestern United States to collect ground-based atmospheric data. This wasn't specifically related to the anomalies. I was part of a team investigating heat waves and air quality near Phoenix, Arizona. But while there, I spoke to some local meteorologists who shared stories of residents seeing unmarked planes crisscrossing the skies at odd hours, leaving behind contrails that didn't behave like normal contrails. Some local Navajo communities told stories about mysterious lights in the sky after these planes passed, and clouds forming rapidly in shapes that looked like monstrous thunderheads, but dissipated just as fast as they appeared. One older gentleman recounted hearing a deep, resonant humming noise late at night and seeing a triangular craft against the stars, silent except for that hum. He believed it was a military craft. Another local claimed that he'd heard from a relative about strange humanoid silhouettes, glimpsed during dust storms, though that might fall into more supernatural lore. However, the linking factor was always these strange aerosol trails and cloud formations. Being a scientist, I tried to approach these field stories with caution, but the fact is, they lined up too well with the satellite data to dismiss out of hand. I started to wonder if the clouds themselves might be some form of camouflage, like if advanced craft or entities were creating or modifying clouds to hide their activities. It's a wild notion, but not unthinkable if you imagine technology capable of altering microphysical properties of the atmosphere. Could it be a form of optical stealth? Or is it simpler than that? Just cloud seeding for some undisclosed reason, with side effects we're not privy to. Around the end of 2021, I noticed a distinct shift in official posture at my organization. A colleague in the communications department let slip that there had been some unusual internal memos referencing public inquiries about odd cloud formations. The memos advised staff to keep public messaging aligned with conventional meteorological explanations, like lenticular clouds, mammatus formations, or rare but naturally occurring phenomena. They even pointed out that certain media outlets were running stories about UFOs and weird skies, and we were to deflect those queries by highlighting known cloud types. It felt to me like a coordinated attempt to keep the narrative firmly in the realm of normal atmospheric science. Then, in early 2022, NASA released images from their Landsat 9 platform capturing bizarre spiral formations near Hawaii. Some of the mainstream press covered it briefly, labeling it as strange but natural, possibly caused by rocket exhaust from a SpaceX launch, or something along those lines. But my own analysis suggested that the spirals were too large, too perfectly formed, and oddly consistent across multiple altitudes. I tried discussing it on an internal message board, but the topic was promptly archived and locked. Normally, free discussion is encouraged, but not in this instance. It was around that point I started considering going public in some manner, but the potential blowback worried me. I don't want to lose my position or jeopardize the collaborations we have with universities and agencies. There's also the possibility that I'm misinterpreting some data. Yet each passing month, the evidence stacks up that something is going on, something that transcends a simple climate engineering program. Which brings me to the possibility of non-human intelligence being involved. I'm not one to jump straight to aliens are doing it, but I can't discount it. The presence of unidentified aerial phenomena in the satellite images, the purposeful shaping of clouds, the rumored sightings on the ground, the possibility of advanced technology operating just beyond official acknowledgement. These all point toward an extraordinary explanation. It could be advanced craft from a covert human program. It could be something interdimensional or even extraterrestrial. I've seen discussions about reptilian shapeshifters or other sensational claims online, and while I won't jump to that extreme, I also can't ignore that some of the sightings talk about entities that don't look human. You might be surprised how many quiet conversations I've had with other scientists who privately admit they think some of these sightings are legitimate, but they're too afraid to speak up publicly for fear of ridicule or worse. In mid-2022, I heard from another contact, someone in the field of atmospheric chemistry, that they'd measured odd isotopes in precipitation collected in remote parts of the southern hemisphere. These isotopes could be explained by volcanic eruptions or cosmic dust, sure, but the distribution pattern didn't match typical stratospheric fallout. They joked that it was alien rain, but when I pressed them about it, they admitted it troubled them. They tried to see if a nuclear test or some rocket stage re-entry might have caused it, but none matched up. It was an isolated event, lasting about 2 weeks, and then vanished. Every time I find a clue, it leads to more questions. Are these engineered events? Are they a byproduct of some other process, like advanced propulsion systems that leave behind exotic exhaust chemicals? Or do they tie into something more paranormal, like portals or interdimensional rifts? I know that sounds crazy, especially coming from someone in a scientific discipline, but I've learned not to dismiss anything outright until it's proven otherwise. Throughout 2022 and 2023, I've continued to quietly track these phenomena. My personal logs now have hundreds of entries detailing everything from spiral cloud anomalies to rectangular swaths of clear air amid uniform cloud decks, where the edges are almost laser straight. I've documented spherical holes that show up for a frame or two and then vanish. Sometimes you can even see a portion of the ocean surface below, as if a column of atmosphere has just been carved out. Could it be some directed energy test, or an advanced satellite-based weapon, or scanning technology? Whatever it is, it's not just me who's noticed. There's a small informal network of researchers, some with backgrounds in meteorology, others in remote sensing, a few with intelligence or military experience, who exchange data on an encrypted channel. The overall consensus is that something is systematically shaping or influencing the sky in certain regions, but the nature and purpose remain unclear. I also want to emphasize the health of our atmosphere as a whole. We already have enough to worry about with climate change, rising CO2 levels, global temperature anomalies, melting polar ice, more frequent extreme weather events. If an unknown group or intelligence is actively manipulating the skies, it could be compounding our environmental crises in ways we don't yet understand. This is one of the major reasons I feel compelled to speak out. The public deserves to know if additional stressors, potentially chemical or radiative, are being introduced into our already vulnerable atmospheric system. Case in point, last fall, I was looking at data from the mid-latitude cirrus experiment, a real project that studies cirrus clouds. There were times when cirrus clouds over the North Atlantic thickened rapidly, then just as quickly disappeared. The official line was that upper-level wind shear and dry air intrusion dissolved them. But the data from water vapor channels didn't show the expected dryness. Also, the timeline was too abrupt, on the scale of minutes rather than hours. Nature doesn't often operate in such a switch-like manner, unless there's a targeted action, like a high-intensity microwave or laser beam breaking up the cloud microstructure. I can't prove that's what happened, but I can't rule it out either. Now, there's another angle I need to bring up: sightings of entities or humanoids near some of these places. I don't have personal experience with that, but I've read credible accounts from field researchers in the Amazon region who've observed strange lights and claimed contact with tall, grayish beings. They said that after these sightings, the local environment changed. Trees had unusual scorch marks. Animals behaved erratically. This might seem disconnected from the atmospheric anomalies, but I no longer believe in coincidences. If advanced beings are operating here, call them greys, reptilians, interdimensionals, or something else, it's possible they're using our atmosphere for reasons we can only guess at. Resource extraction, biological experimentation, or maybe they're trying to mitigate something, ironically. I've heard theories that some ET groups might be trying to stabilize our climate to prevent catastrophic outcomes, though that's purely speculation. One of the oddest tangential stories I came across involved a maritime shipping route near the coast of Chile. A cargo ship crew reported seeing swirling lights descend from cloud cover and hover just above the ocean. They thought it was some advanced military aircraft, but then the lights sank into the water, causing no splash, no disturbance, as if they passed through a barrier. That suggests USOs, unidentified submersible objects. The next day, local fishermen found bizarre patterns of dead fish floating in a perfect circle. Now, I'm not vouching for that story's accuracy, but it was relayed to me by someone who claims to have read the official maritime incident report. It's little pieces like this that, when taken together, paint a picture of extremely abnormal occurrences both in the sky and in bodies of water, leading me to wonder if the entire planet is subject to infiltration or manipulation by forces unknown. Bringing this back to my main focus, the clouds. Over these last few years, the shapes have grown more complex. It's not just linear anomalies or circles. Sometimes I see honeycomb-like patterns that almost look like a perfect grid from a high vantage point. Other times, there are wave-like ripples, reminiscent of undulatus asperitas, but more regular and extending over thousands of square miles in ways that natural wave clouds rarely do. We used to see wave clouds primarily near mountain ranges or in specific atmospheric conditions, but these new wave patterns show up over open ocean with no topographical features to trigger them. Is it some sort of resonance effect caused by electromagnetic fields? I don't know, but it's consistent enough to track. And let me tell you, some nights I lose sleep thinking about this. I wonder if I'm crossing lines by even compiling this data. I wonder if I should destroy my logs for my own safety. But there's a nagging feeling that the public has a right to know. What if our environment is being used like a laboratory by unknown players, human or otherwise? What if the odd cloud phenomena are just the tip of the iceberg, signifying deeper changes at the atmospheric or even planetary level? Then there's the matter of official denial or silence. If this was all innocent research, like advanced cloud seeding to combat drought, why not publicly announce it? We do press releases about lesser projects all the time. Instead, we get stonewalled or told to keep quiet. That only makes me suspect that the truth is bigger and more disturbing than conventional climate experiments. Let me wrap up by saying I'm not claiming to have all, or even most, of the answers. I have data, personal observations, secondhand stories, and circumstantial evidence that, when pooled together, suggests something extraordinary is happening above our heads. Whether it's tied to clandestine military programs, the presence of non-human intelligences, or a collaboration between known and unknown entities. I can't say for certain, but my gut tells me it's not random, and it's not purely natural. My hope is that by sharing what I've seen, albeit anonymously, I can encourage others with more knowledge to come forward. Maybe someone in a different agency has the missing puzzle piece that links everything. Maybe if enough voices speak out, we can force a real investigation, or at least open a public dialogue that's not just shot down as conspiracy. The atmosphere is a shared resource. We all have a stake in understanding what's being done to it. If you decide to share this email on your channel, I only ask that you respect my request for anonymity. I can't afford to lose my position or face potential legal repercussions. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Even if you never make this public, it's a relief just to tell someone who won't immediately dismiss me.